Hi everyone, Elke Rubach here from Rubach Wealth. I have today David Shlagbaum, a colleague and friend with me. Further to the holistic approach we follow at Rubach Wealth, where we try to bring many eyes to give us different views and different opinions that will enrich anyone's financial plan or overall goal setting. I thought we would have today David come and talk to us about the process he follows and what he does for a living. So David, I think you'll do a much better job than me introducing yourself. So by all means, over to you.
So thanks, Elke. David Schlagbaum. I'm a lawyer and a facilitator. I head up the family business law group at Pallett, Valo. We're a mid-sized law firm catering to the mid-market, and my particular area of focus is working with family-owned businesses on transition planning, corporate governance, and professionalizing the family business.
Well, you and I have talked many times about, our job would not be well done if we just went in to recommend things or products or documenting deals or agreements. And being a reformed lawyer, as I call myself, we see the value of facilitating conversations that will help your and my clients get a clear idea of what success looks like for them. So in your world, you and I have talked about your role as a minesweeper and a shepherd, but would you mind going deeper into that?
Sure. So when I start any family business engagement, I'm walking in without a map, and I'm walking with the family across an open field. And the idea is to work with the family to build a road to where the family wants the business to go. Meaning we want to create structures, policies, best practices that will position the business either for continuity or for transition, whether the business is going to be transferred to the next generation or to an outside buyer or to members of the family. The impediment that I have walking into the engagement is that I don't know what the issues are. And as you say, it's not a question of how I see the world, it's a question of how they see the world. And our job is to extract that vision and to translate it in a way that appeals to their plan, their notion of the world. And so what I have to do to start the process is I need to find out what the issues are. And in order to find out what the issues or the obstacles or the mines, and hence the notion of the minesweeper is that I have to conduct individual interviews, confidential interviews with each of the stakeholders, where I'm establishing trust, and they have an opportunity to discourse, to talk about the elephants in the room, the issues that don't get aired. People know about them, but they don't want to talk about them. And that gives me an opportunity to see what those issues are, what can be navigated around, what can we find a way to diffuse some of them. And I think there's an interesting sort of a parable or story about an orange, which I think illustrates the approach that I think you and I both take for what we do. And it's because we don't know what's going on that we have to ask questions, and it's the quality of the questions. So in simple terms, the story is two people sitting at a table, and there's an orange on the table, and they're arguing about ostensibly about who should have the orange. And an innocent bystander walks by and says, "What's going on?" And just determines maybe a Solomon-esque like approach is the right way to go, and you just cut the orange in half and hand each side half. And maybe it's not exactly what each of them was looking for, but at least they got something close to what they were looking for. But I think our task is a more in-depth and more complete approach to things, which would be that, for instance, if it was me, I would ask one of them in and have a confidential conversation and say, "Why do you want the orange?" And the answer would be, and the answer in this particular case was, because I'm starving, I'm hungry, I need to eat something. And then I call the other one in and I ask, why do you want the orange? And the answer that he gave was that it's his anniversary today. He promised his wife he was going to bake a cake, and he needs the orange rind to make the cake. And so suddenly, because we've asked the right questions, there's a solution there that is fuller and meets each of the parties' needs on a much deeper and correct way than you would by just taking a simpler approach. And that's simply because of the quality of the questions. And as to the role of the shepherd, you know, the danger is that even if you have a plan and you've met with the family and you're going forward with a particular plan, I think there's a danger because things can get heated up and people start to lose sight of the big picture. And so whereas when we came in, we were trying to get people to focus on a big picture. Our job, I think, is that if we see things falling down and people start to wallow in the weeds and start to throw mud at each other, that our job is, as facilitators, is to extract them from that and to remind them and to ask questions like, does this fit the big picture? Should we really be going down this route and trying to get people focused? So I think also that that's a good segue for me to ask you, Elke. I know that you take a holistic approach to what you do, which is sort of big picture oriented. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about how that big picture focus affects what you do.
And I think that orange parable applies to every discipline we come across. I agree with you with our plans, and when we talk to families, business owners, or even individuals, right? We want to spend some time clarifying what money means to them and unearthing what the financial, I call it the financial tape they have in their heads looks like, because everybody has a different conversation. Everybody sees it, has the influence from a previous generation or conversations they had with their parents. And from there, they can also pull certain values that are more or less important to them and that they want to preserve into the next generation. So it's more understanding what money means to them, and that will allow us to kind of like draw a path to success and talk to different stakeholders in the overall picture of this client, right? We use a lot of analogies, and we see their wealth as a puzzle. And obviously, at the end of the day, everybody wants to see their puzzle come together. And we help them in an orderly way put the pieces together and come up with a plan. You know, maybe you've set up the frame first, and then you put different pieces together. And what we really want to make sure is that people have what they need and need what they have, and are clear about how that works and how all those pieces interact with each other, because there's nothing more frustrating than finishing your puzzle and then realizing that you're missing 3 pieces, or that you have a piece from a different puzzle that doesn't work. So we build flexibility, we enable conversations, we enable the inclusion at the right time, of course, at the right level, for the different generations to partake into the learning and management of wealth. Because, you know, it's very common that college generation 1 spent their entire lives building the wealth, but the lack of conversation and understanding what is important to G2 or G3 is what, first of all, creates problems. Second of all, there's a risk for misunderstanding and biases to kick in. And that's when, you know, short sleeves to short sleeves happens from generation to generation. It's not that they didn't know how to build wealth, they didn't learn how to be the stewards of their wealth. So that's our job, that's our role.
So sorry
Go ahead.
but it just struck me as you were talking that, and I like the analogy to the puzzle, And what occurs to me about that is that it's intricate, right? And so much of what we do is through the information gathering, we're trying to construct a puzzle that relies on the integrity of the information that we're getting, right? Which is the last thing that either of us wants to have is to work with the family to create a plan, and then be side railed by a disclosure that comes out of left field because we didn't ask the right question, right? And so that's why the one-on-one interviews becomes such an intricate part of the overall piece, even in terms of allowing us to manage the discussion when you're moving from the individual to a group level. Knowing where each of the players are coming from really helps a lot.
Yeah, and if people think that this is a process that can be done in 2 weeks, that's a total illusion. This is a journey, and the same way, you know, wealth is built over time. This conversation takes time, and it's actually a lot more pleasant than people think it is, and the outcome is so much greater. So in your world, David, how do you help your clients define success?
So it's one of the exercises that I take people through at the very outset of a project. And you would say to yourself, I mean, how can they possibly be putting their minds to what success looks like at the beginning? And I think part of the problem is that people are faced with issues and they create obstacles around those issues. They don't allow themselves to dream big, think big, because in their minds, they've only been able to focus on a narrow range of options, and none of them are palatable, right? So the first thing that you need to do is I ask the question, you know, suppose we were 2 years down the road or 6 months down the road or whatnot, and we were sharing a glass of wine and thinking, isn't this wonderful, right? And I'm so glad that we did the work together to get to this point. What does that mean? Translate to me what that means for you if we were sitting there and having that conversation. And I say to them, unshackle yourself in a sense that don't look at what you've got right now and those things that you perceive as, oh, I'm never going to get over this hurdle. You know, just go crazy. Think of what you would like that world to look like. So using a simple example, you know, maybe success in one family means a sister who's been running the family business, and there's 2 brothers. She's got 2 brothers who she does not want to have as partners, and they know nothing about the business, have never been involved, but the founder of the business wants to share the wealth. He wants to share the wealth that he created over the years, and so he wants his sons to have a share of the business. So in their minds, this issue could be insurmountable, right? So one perspective might be, I might walk in and say, all right, well, forget about the business, and why doesn't the daughter keep the business, and the founder will focus on other assets that he's got for the funds, and balance the assets that way. But that would not be giving voice to their dreams, their ambitions, how they want to do things. So the question is, how can you achieve what they're looking for? And I recognize the fact that it's a simple example, but it's using the circumstances of the family to fashion a resolution. And that would be, for instance, to suggest that, you know, maybe the daughter continues to run the business, and but the sons have non-voting preferred shares that allow them to share a share of the profits, and when the business ultimately gets sold, they get a piece of the action as part of the purchase price. So it's a resolution that allows both things to occur, right? The daughter gets to continue to manage the business without the intervention of the sons, and it also fulfills the founder's dream. The main thing that comes out of that, in my mind, is that, you know, we all come into this with our own biases. I may have my own notions of what fairness means when it comes to the topic of the topic of compensation, or what a best practices structure might look like from the point of view of employing family. What are the rules about employing family in the business, and so on. But then it's about me, right? And the answer at the end of the day is it's their plan. They have to own it, and we have to know enough about it as facilitators to create an atmosphere that's conducive for us to extract the plan from them, an non-judgmental and a comfortable atmosphere where they can address their values, their needs, their goals, and create a plan that works for them.